In this video, we will learn how to become a people blossomer, which is a continuation of the law of expectation from the previous video that Mariana made. Just to review, what is the law of expectation? It is essentially what I believe about my students will make an incredible difference in what they will actually learn and how they will perform. So our expectations as teachers, as parents, as disciplers will undeniably have a tremendous impact on the lives of the students, either for the good or not for the good, depending on how our expectations of them are set. So in this expectation model, there are the three boxes we see here. So of course the first is a speaker, and the role of the speaker is to examine the students, to consider them constantly and continuously. This is actually a part of how the teacher exists to serve the students by knowing what their needs are, and so that that goal can be translated into how the students can be stirred up in their hearts and the teacher can excite the students positively. And this should be done personally, according to the development of each student, and progressively. And how the teacher can go from one side to the other, that there is a process that needs to be accomplished, which is the exhortation process. It is a process that the teacher needs to speak to the student in a public manner and on a daily basis. And this is what we will learn about today in this episode. So this is the expectation method, the process in which we can go through with our students or whomever we want to blossom. So the first is examine, then expose, then there's the component of emotion, and then the component of expectation and endearment. I will go through each one of these steps for you, and I will give you an example so that you can see this and realize it in the actual world. So examining the person you want to blossom, this is just like what I've mentioned in the previous slide. Examine means that we study that person, we pay close attention to them and know what their needs are. We intentionally have our antennas up to search the students to find the good in them that we want to expose. And moving on to the second step, exposing what the person did by giving verbal expression. In other words, I need to give a compliment based on the action that they just performed. An example that I want to share with you is my own daughter, Serafina. I noticed she has been taking initiative to prepare her backpack every night. She takes out her workbook from today's classes and put them in the bookshelf, and she took tomorrow's school subjects and put it in her backpack to get it ready for her to take to school tomorrow, the next day. So one day I noticed her doing this without me telling her to, because usually I would have to remind her, because this is her first year in the first grade, so this is a habit that she needs to develop to be responsible in taking care of her school books. So I took this opportunity to blossom her and apply this principle. So this is what I would say in the expose stage. Sarah, I noticed you were preparing your school books for tomorrow without me telling you. And I would stop and smile at her and look at her at the eye. And what I did was I verbally said what she just did, what I saw her did. And so the next step would be describing my emotion about what the person did. So then I would tell her how I felt about her action. So that makes me feel really proud of you. And then I would stop again and look at her in the eye to make sure that she really notice what my comments are at her. And the next step would be the expectation. That I would tell the person of what I expect of him in the future. Because up until this point, I haven't blossomed anyone. What I did to Sarah was I just gave her a compliment of what she did. And that compliment is based on a fact that was done in the past. It has no future dimension. And this is where the power of expectation comes into play. By putting it into a perspective in the future. So you tell the person what you expect from her by saying, this is what I said, I believe you are becoming a responsible young lady. I didn't have to tell you or remind you, and you already did it by yourself. And what this statement of expectation did is that it is throwing it into the future, and it takes off the person's attention off the past on what she just did and puts it toward into the future to what she wants to become, which is a responsible young lady. And that is called being a visionary leader, or a parent, visionary parent, or a visionary teacher. Being a visionary is a person who can see what other people do not see yet. You're not just stating the fact of the past and stop at presenting your emotions, which is about the present, but you are taking one step further into the future to shape that future by telling that person what you believe they can become by God's wonderful and enabling grace. And the last step, the step of endearment, it is to endear yourself to the person through appropriate touch. So it is a stage where we can establish a personal relation, like a closeness to the student or whomever you want to blossom. So at this point, I would hug her. I would hug my daughter Sarah, and again repeat that I am proud of her. So just adding that personal touch to it. All effective expectations have some common characteristics. The first one is that we have to express our belief in the person's potential. And in doing so, we can use words such as, I believe you are becoming, fill in the blanks, or I can see that you are developing into a certain kind of person, and you fill in the blanks. And the second one is that effective expectations use future perspective. So using words like becoming, growing, developing, or starting to become, and you fill in the blanks by yourself. All of these words signal an open-ended opportunity to the receiver, and it's something that the other person can anticipate and feel good about. And of course, if you want to have it be an effective expectation, you must use positive words and not negative. And then the fourth one is to tailor your expectation to their noblest aspirations. because you want them to find their dream instead of just sharing your own dream for them. And the fifth characteristic is to express your expectation in using inspiring terminologies. Uh, don't use confining terminologies that will limit the person's growth and does not leave any room for that person to paint her own picture of what her future wants to look like. And lastly, it is to ensure your expectations are within the realm of possibility. Do not aim too high that your expectation is actually unachievable and the goal is just too difficult for them to reach. But make sure that your expectation is something that they can achieve in the short term and in the long term. I think if we truly want to become people blossomer, we must put it in our agenda to search our students, to examine them, and to think of ways, to intentionally think of ways and words to say to them in order to blossom them, to set a good expectations for them. We cannot go day by day just cruising and not without intentionally having this agenda in the back of our mind, because these moments, without us realizing, will be easy to overlook. And last but not least, I think it is important that we pray to the Lord to ask to give us the wisdom and the insight on who He wants us to blossom in our life. So pray this prayer: Lord, would you give me the creativity and the unconditional love to blossom and fill in a child's name of whomever God has put in your heart to blossom.